maybe even not. In fact, let's go even more extreme. They don't even do any of those things. Like they end up having a Daniel Descalso type of offseason again. Cody Delmendo, will
Probably go jump into Lake Michigan.
Hey, what's up, guys? Cody Delmendo from CHGO. I've been a CHGO listener for a long time, but to meet you in person, now we get to talk Cubs and just,
Yeah.
you know, I think I heard some news earlier that's going to break your heart about Shohei. How you dealing with that?
I'm not believing it until I actually see him sign with someone. That's basically how I've been taking these winter meetings so far. It's been I think a lot of, not to discredit anyone actually putting these rumors out there, but I think a lot of it is no one really truly knows, where he's going to go. I do think that they at least know the teams that are favorites, or at least in that, top 3, top 4 echelon. But as far as like which team he's actually going to pick, I don't think anyone knows. So that's kind of where I'm at as a fan. I also feel at the same time that if they don't get Shohei, it's not a failure of an off season. So believe it or not, if they don't get him, as sad as I'll be, I'll probably wake up the next day and be like, all right, now what's plan B?
Well, and that's what I love about listening to you guys on CHGO is that like you're a fan before you're an analyst or a color guy or a radio guy.
Kind of my role.
Yeah. Well, and I just, as soon as I heard the Shohei news, I was like, all right, I'm going to talk to Cody here in a little bit. And he's probably going to be like near tears, but you don't believe it yet. But one of the things that I was thinking is like 20 minutes later, we see John Morosi coming out with a tweet of like Cubs were engaging with Rhys Hoskins. Kind of, to me, feels like a sign of like, all right, they moved on from Shohei. It's time to like start focusing on other things. So still not quite buying into that though.
Well, with Hoskins, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just because it probably will be a 1-year prove-it deal, maybe a mutual option,
like Bellinger,
like Cody Bellinger, right? I wasn't surprised to see that tweet from John Morosi. So my thing is, if the Cubs were out on Ohtani, I think they would have already maybe traded for Tyler Glasnow or gone ahead and signed Hoskins, or done something else that maybe none of us expected. Maybe jump into those Juan Soto rumors again, but it just seems very quiet from the Cubs side, and
it's kind of quiet across the board right now.
Right.
Though.
But from a Cubs perspective, it's like, I kind of like it the way that it is. You know what I mean? Like, it hasn't been official that the Cubs are out. Like, sure, Nightingale said that they're falling out of the contention, and I think Jesse Rogers also said the same thing on ESPN 1000. But then Ken Rosenthal was on Foul Territory, and he basically said that the Cubs are still part of it. So it's hard to read, like, who is right, who is wrong. And again, I don't think anyone truly knows. So as the fan of this podcast, I'm just going to continue to believe that there's still hope, which can be a dangerous thing.
I know yesterday Lance was on your show, just had him on today on mine, and then about an hour later I was talking to a writer, and he said, I'm hearing Shohei is actually potentially going back to the Angels.
Yeah.
And Lance was like, negative 10%. And that's, first of all, that's just like another sign of like, we can only speculate right now, but I just think that would be so weak.
It'd be boring.
Yeah.
And it would be bad for the league. It'd be bad for the game. Like, as a selfish fan that wants Shohei Ohtani on the Cubs, I want to see him be like in the postseason and like create those playoff moments that we all want to see. I mean, he is far and away the greatest baseball player that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to pitch the way he does when healthy, on top of being one of, if not the best hitter in the league, the world, whatever, at the same time, like, it's like I truly appreciate what he does. Now, of course, I don't want him to go to the Cardinals. That would be absolutely awful.
Not even on the table.
Right. Yeah, I don't want them to just appear out of nowhere and be a part of that. But even if he didn't go to the Cubs, like, as much as it would suck to like see him, go to the Dodgers, like everyone thinks, it'd still be like, all right, well, at least we get to see him play in meaningful games. What probably would be consistently, and obviously with the way the Dodgers operate, it seems like he'd probably be in the postseason a lot more.
Yep.
And, that's kind of what's sad about how Mike Trout's career has gone. And I will always defend Mike Trout as one of the greatest players I've ever seen, too. It's not his fault that they don't go to the postseason every year. He does everything he could to make that team good.
Yeah.
But with baseball, it's a lot different than the NBA or something. Like, you need an entire lineup to be consistently good at whatever their role is. You need that balance. You need starting pitching. You need a good enough bullpen that you can rely on more than just one or two guys, right? Like, you need a full team to be able to have success consistently. It just feels like the Angels have never been able to do that in this era of Trout and Ohtani. And it just sucks for the game. It sucks for the league. Like, on top of the fact that they play at 9 p.m. every night if you're on the East or the West, or East or the Central Time Zone. So it's like, to me, no matter where he goes, and I don't want him to go stay on the West Coast because then I have to stay up later to watch him. But if he just goes to an organization that is winning, it's only good for the league, and it's good for baseball because, like, after watching him in the World Baseball Classic,
that was amazing.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And, like,
the way it finished was unreal.
Oh yeah, him against Trout or whatever, like that. I want more of that, you know. And I was watching that as a fan who just didn't really care what happened. Like, sure, I guess I was rooting for Team USA because I'm American, but like, I didn't really care too much about the World Baseball Classic like a lot of people did, which is fine. But when I knew that Japan and Team USA was going to play against each other for the championship, I knew that eventually we'd get Ohtani versus Trout, and like that's what reeled me in. I wanted to see what happened. Now I want to see him, help lead a team to the promised land. You know what I mean?
100%. Well, and now kind of talking about balance and relating that to the Cubs, I felt like this last year they learned how to finally get a lineup together that was deep, that was balanced. When you've got Yan Gomes with over a 720 OPS hitting 7th and 8th, that's much different than what we have been accustomed to.
Sure.
Now, we just got to have that guy.
Yeah.
And I don't think Rhys Hoskins is a guy. I think he's a 5 hitter, and he's going to be really good. But like you've said a lot, we got to replace Cody Bellinger and get another guy. So I'm just not, cool, Glasnow and everything, but I'm not hearing enough about going after some guys that are serious trade rumors or free agency rumors.
I genuinely will feel a lot would have to change my mind. But if, say, they miss out on Ohtani, like everyone believes at this point, and they don't bring back Bellinger and they don't trade for Soto, if they don't get one of those three and they sign Rhys Hoskins, then they're basically going into next year with a lot of hope that a lot of their young guys are going to perform.
For sure.
And they're going to hope that Seiya Suzuki finally, turns into that guy that they probably thought he would be when he came over from Japan. And, Alexander Canario will probably get a lot more opportunity. PCA will probably start the year on the team.
Yeah. You got to imagine Council's probably going to play them more than Ross was.
Yeah. And the Cubs will they'll push down our throats the narrative of, Council being this big thing that's going to change everything.
Yeah.
And I think Craig Council will help. I think he legitimately will add 1 or 2, maybe 3 wins to this team based off how he manages managerial decisions that he has made, been able to manage a bullpen the way that he has shown over the course of his time with Milwaukee. But, like, at the same time, imagine taking a guy like that who did so much with so little, put him on a team like the Cubs who has the resources to, go out there and sign a guy like Ohtani, be in the race for a guy like Ohtani or in Bellinger and all these guys. If they fail to bring back at least one of those 3 guys somehow, some way, I'll probably find a way to talk myself into 85 wins or something like that, just because I am high on the farm system, as people should be.
But that's not fun.
Yeah. And also, it's like, how can you do that after signing a guy like Craig Counsell and coming off a year where going into September you were about 90-some% chance to make the playoffs and you missed out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it would be a massive failure if the Cubs are unable to really add to this offense. And that's why, like, on our shows this last month and a half, I've been screaming about how they need to make the offense better.
Yeah.
Because, the bullpen had some relapses at the end of the year. They had some bad moments, this and that. Yeah, well, they also had some injuries. And you know what? Maybe David Ross could have used some other guys if he felt confident in a Luke Little with a 3-run lead instead of a 1-run lead every single night.
Game.
You know what I mean? So they need, like Jed Hoyer said it himself, good teams blow teams out, right?
Yep.
And the Cubs, as good as they were last year, they probably would have been better off if they scored more runs and didn't force their bullpen to be in high leverage moments every single game.
Every game. Every game.
So, and that starts with the offense. I still think pitching wins championships and all that, but you have to be able to score runs so your pitching staff isn't so stressed every single night. So
you said something interesting. I feel like there needs to be a stat now for F WAR or WAR just for a manager. You said Craig Counsell will add 1 to 3.
It's hard to
manage
it's hard to measure like what a manager does or brings to like the success to a ball club, because it's like, okay, Dave Roberts, he's been with the Dodgers for a really long time, but I mean, I don't know how good of a manager he really is whenever he's got
when
the
you've got that
lineups
lineup,
and the organizational like health that they do. Like they just bring up top prospects in the top 100. It feels like every year. All these things, and that's not to discredit him at all. I'm not even saying that I think he's a bad manager, but you can't sit here and definitively say that this guy is one of the best managers in baseball.
For sure.
Whenever he's had that kind of talent all that time, and somehow, some way, they find a way to lose in the playoffs every year. So it's a very like tight rope to try and like argue about certain guys. Now, guys like Bruce Bochy, with 3 rings, and was it 4 rings now?
4 now,
4 rings now. It took a team like the Rangers, who were awful in 2022, and they spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of money, but at the same time, like, it's not like the Rangers, who spent a lot of money the year before, were any better. So there was something that he brought to that clubhouse that you can't measure, that us as fans will never know, but he brings whatever it is on top of, the good decisions that he makes in game to put that team over the top, to not just be a playoff contender, but they went out and won the World Series. So, and he's done it he did it with the Giants too. So he obviously has a proven track record. So you can't just say, because he's won 3-4 World Series, that's why he's the best manager in terms of like actual grading, like measuring it. But at the same time, like, at least you saw the difference that he brought to that organization the moment they hired him, because they had a ton of talent. After spending a ton of money 2 years ago, they go from a team that didn't make the playoffs and looked like maybe perhaps it was a mistake to spend all that money. They took that team and in 1 year went to the World Series and won. Like, so
it was huge.
It's huge.
So you last year, I remember, were like, I'm not worried about the bullpen. They know what they're doing. And then, a lot of it had to do with injuries. But at the same time, because there's still major holes to fill in this team, mainly in starting pitching and the corner and field spots, it feels to me like, they're going after Stevenson and maybe a few other veteran arms like they usually have in the past. It feels like there's so many guys like Ben Brown, Cade Horton. I feel like Horton's probably going to come in and just fit right in the rotation, but they could come in and just say, hey, we need bullpen help more than we need starting pitching help because we went out and got Glass now and now he's healthy. Is that kind of the route that you feel like this team is going to go, or?
I do think that they're going to sign a reliever on a multi-year deal, which they haven't. I think we said this on the show, or I mentioned this on the show last week. I think the last time they gave a reliever a multi-year deal was Brian Dunsing in like 2017. Wonder where the hell that guy's at now. But I think that they're going to go a little bit more proven this offseason. I still think they're going to try and bring in some guys that have high upside, but you look at the numbers and you're like, why would we sign this guy? You know what I mean? But the thing with the bullpen is that they just needed more depth, right? Like, at least despite those holes, at least going to next year, who the closer is going to be. Like, I'll be shocked if Abreu isn't the closer opening day.
Yeah.
And Julian Merriweather went from a guy that they picked up off waivers to a 7th, 8th inning,
legit
setup man. Bullpens are so volatile, so sure, he could fall off like Keegan Thompson did this past year, right?
For sure.
But at least going into the year, you feel pretty good about those two there. On top of like some of the young guys that you're developing, Daniel Palencia, I know he had ups and downs. There were moments where it's like, this guy is gonna fail at the major league level, but I think with the stuff, they can get him right. He could be a major addition. I mean, throwing 100 miles per hour is something that the Cubs haven't had over the years. Even during the golden era, they didn't have a lot of that. So you have him, you have Luke Little, who has crazy stuff, strikeout rates really high in the minor leagues. Those two guys they're wild cards because they're prospects that have major league experience but not a lot of success yet. So you're hoping that they take a step, right? Excuse me. But then that's when you go into free agency or maybe the trade market to get some depth to be able to go with some of those guys. That way, not everyone is gassed in September, So I think they can sign one or two guys to a multi-year deal. Last week they were kind of in on Robert Stevenson. I don't know. I don't think he signed with anyone yet, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But to me, that however they build it, they need to get one or two proven guys, and then if they want to find a project or two to bring in there, great, because then you still at least have some guys that are in Iowa that have some high ceiling, like Bailey Horn, for example.
For sure.
That could maybe come up, maybe impresses. You still have Leiter Jr., you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know his arm fell off at the end of the year, but that's because he pitched the most games of his career last year, right? I'm hoping that Keegan Thompson, if he makes it to the Cubs in spring training, hopefully that it's a bounce back year for him. Ethan Roberts, he's coming off Tommy John surgery. I think before he got hurt, he showed crazy stuff. He looked like a guy that perhaps could be a mainstay in the bullpen. And I do think Cody Hoyer could come back on a minor league deal or something like that.
We'll see.
Which is hopeful,
Yeah.
but you can't especially guys like Hoyer and Ethan Roberts, you can't go into the year banking on those guys being major additions. You're hoping that they are, extremes that kind of hit for you that only take your good team and make them even better, right?
Yeah.
Kind of, it's like it's kind of how I always looked at David Ross in 2016. Like he had his best offensive season of his career in 2016 for the Cubs. But he's still, you look at numbers and you're like, these aren't good. Well, look at his baseball reference and see, oh, wow, it was one of his best years offensively.
Yeah.
That's because he had a crazy lineup in front of him, you know what I mean?
Did,
so,
except for that one year that I think he dropped 20 bombs with the Reds.
I mean, there was probably one or two of it. But
it
was one of his best offensive seasons in 2016. So that's kind of what I'm saying, though, about the bullpen is you gotta get some guys who have proven something in there that you think Tommy Hotovy can help even make better, or at least if they do struggle, can help get them back on the right path. And with the pitch lab that the Cubs have developed and the success stories that they have with certain guys, I feel pretty confident that they can do that. So to me, again, depth is the big thing. Everyone in our YouTube chat is always talking about, we need a closer.
Yeah.
It's just dude, to me, you need more depth for the 6th and 7th inning, because there's just no starter unless your name is Garrett Cole or, some of the most highest paid pitchers in the league that have, been doing it for years and years, Scherzer, Verlander, whatever. There isn't a lot of pitchers now who are going deep in the game.
There's not.
It just isn't. And so it's not like I can go into next year, even if they were to add Glasnow to the rotation, where I feel confident that every day the Cubs are going to have a chance to have a guy go 7 innings.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they need more depth for that 5th, 6th, 7th inning role to help. That way Leiter Jr. is not almost throwing his arm out at the end of the year. You know?
I mean, they overused him so much that I'm actually wondering if we're even going to see him at all this next year.
Yeah.
But all right, I appreciate the time. I feel like I'm on the CHGO Cubs podcast, just listening to you right now. But I have 2 questions. You're an extreme fan, right? You make a lot of hey, if this happens, and I'm gonna go and I'm gonna jump into the Michigan River,
Lake Michigan.
Yeah, Lake Michigan. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a California boy.
That's fine.
But
Cubs fans, we're everywhere.
Hey, yeah, for sure. So I want to do 2 fill in the blanks.
Okay.
First one, if the Cubs sign either or Shohei, Soto, or re-sign Bellinger, I, Cody Delmendo, will blank.
And
I won't hold you to it, but I want to hear something. if they get one or multiple of those guys.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. Okay. If the Cubs sign Shohei Ohtani, if the Cubs find a way to sign Shohei Ohtani, I I will eat Japanese food for 6 months straight.
Oh my gosh.
I will just eat nothing but Japanese food for an entire summer. I'll start eating Japanese food from.
We're gonna throw that on an ad at Wrigley.
I will eat nothing but Japanese food the entire 2024 season. But in real, like, if they're able to sign one of those guys, I will celebrate with. If they sign two, I'll celebrate with 2 beer bats. If they sign one, I'll definitely celebrate with 1 beer bat.
Okay, 2 beer bats. That's big.
We
should have had you do one here. All right,
Lucas
now.
tell me I should have brought the beer bat, and it's
You
like
should have. Should have.
I didn't think about it. That's bad content.
We'll do another one. I'll come to Chicago and we'll do one in studio.
There you go.
All right. Now on the opposite end, if the Cubs not only don't get one of those guys, but also like only make one of the moves we've been talking about, either it's only signing Hoskins or only trading for Glass now, and then like that's the only highlight. Maybe even not. In fact, let's go even more extreme. They don't even do any of those things. Like they end up having a Daniel Descalso type of offseason again. Cody Delmendo will
probably go jump into Lake Michigan. I will probably go jump into Lake. I mean, when I say all the time on the show that I'll be irrationally angry about this or that, I say that because being that angry about sports is kind of ridiculous. But if the Cubs just, after signing Craig Counsell, if they go into next season with no major offseason moves or trades or anything to at least make the team better than last year's team, then in some ways, the way I'm thinking about it right now, it's like I don't even think it's irrational. Like, we should all be angry and like we're lining up outside the marquee at Wrigley Field with picket signs yelling for Tom to sell the team. You know what I mean? Like,
just picturing that scene from Shrek.
Yeah, like I would be that angry because it just does not make any sense. And on top of that, the Cubs haven't made the playoffs since 2020, if you want to count the COVID year, 2018, if you don't count the COVID year, which is what I do. They haven't won a playoff game since 2017, and they have one of the most expensive experiences in baseball, man. They charge $12 to $14 for a beer at Wrigley Field now. I know people who have told me stories about how they used to be able to get beers for like $1 at Wrigley Field. And I know inflation, all that. I know that has nothing to do with ownership.
1908. No.
But what I'm saying is that they charge so much for you to just go to a game more often than not, just because it's Wrigley Field and they have all these things outside the ballpark, the sports book, and all this stuff. It just would be an incredibly awful look to have all these things charge this much money to come watch their product, but not do anything to make the team even better than last year. So, and I would genuinely feel like the team isn't better than last year if they don't bring back Bellinger at least, or even sign Hoskins or trade for Tyler Glasnow. There's nothing like, because Kate Horton's going to be great, but he's going to be on an innings limit next year. I don't think he's going to pitch 100 innings at all. I think he could probably pitch 80, maybe, but and he's not going to start the year on the team, right? Like, on top of that, like, that's just one prospect. Like, I can start naming guys, and it's like you're hoping that some of them light a fire, but
we're beyond hope at this point.
That and like, the Cubs should not be operating like that with how much they charge fans to go. If they were charging us tickets that like the White Sox do, it's so cheap to go to a Sox game, man. Like, if the Cubs are charging us money like the Sox do, then I probably wouldn't complain about this as much. But the Cubs legitimately have one of the most expensive experiences in all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
And they haven't done anything to make this team better until last year, where I felt like, okay, this is their start to building something after a bad year of, I guess, looking at what they had, right? This past year, you were coming off signing a Bellinger on that Pruvy deal, signing Swanson, the best defensive shortstop in the league, and you got some good extreme performances that kind of show you, okay, we got Justin Steele, who can be in the top of our rotation. Yeah. You got Nico Horner winning Gold Glove. He's pairs really well with Swanson. Seiya Suzuki, he looks like he can be one of the best hitters in the league, but he also looks like he can. But can he give us a full season? Optimistic, from an optimistic view like mine, I think he can. Ian Happ, a lot of fans like to hate him, but he's a very valuable player.
Pretty consistent too.
And they have some nice pieces. They have a nice young nucleus. They just need like a real stud, superstar, star player to go in that middle of that lineup. Obviously, got to add some pitching, whatever. But to me, you gotta make this offense better, so you're not putting your pitchers in these stressful situations every single day for an entire 162 season, so 162 game season. So that's such an, like what you said is such an extreme that it probably in some ways isn't even like irrational to be angry, but
it better not happen.
It better not happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
I think that they're going to have a fun offseason that in 5 years after they win another World Series, we'll think back, remember the winter meetings when they signed Shohei or when they traded for Soto? That was the start,
That was
man.
the start. And let's see if we've got any sort of 6 months of Japanese food coming up for you since we've been on here for about 30 minutes. All right, I don't see anything about Shohei, so it looks like we're
made
good.
it through.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's hope in about 2 or 3 months you're not jumping into Lake Michigan. And
I hope not.
I feel like we're going to be somewhere in the middle here. I don't think – I'm sorry. I want to be the realist, but
That's fair.
I don't feel like Shohei's happening, but I also don't feel like we're not going to get someone big that gets us excited, even more so than Swanson in last year.
If Shohei doesn't happen, Bellinger goes back to priority number one
For sure, 100%. All right, guys, if you're not already subscribed and watching CHGO, you got to. These guys are awesome. Cody, thanks so much, man.
I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, thank you.